guys and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Sneha and today I'm here to talk to you about all my January reads. So yes, I am doing a wrap-up video after quite some time because usually I have just so many books to talk about in a monthly wrap-up that I don't want. I'm kind of disinclined towards it because it gets tedious. But this time in January I finished only 4 books. One of the reasons is that January was a busy month for me at work and personally as well. So that's why I didn't end up reading as much. But also I ended up reading all like thick tomes. So I did take my time with them and I'm glad I kind of did because I enjoyed most of these books immensely and thoroughly, and I think that's going to be my theme for the rest of the year as well. I want to take my time with books and read them slowly and absorb them more than just trying to race through a book in order to get to the next one. Like I said, I've read 4 books in the month of January and they've been quite diverse. There's one historical fiction, there's one contemporary historical fiction, sci-fi combined book. I have one classic and I also have one magic book. I'll talk about all of them slowly. So without any further ado, let's get started. The first book that I finished was kind of an extension of what I was reading in December, which is The Lincoln Highway by Amor Tolls. This is the story of Emmett and Billy, 2 brothers. Emmett is recently released from a juvenile work facility because of a crime that he kind of inadvertently commits, and when he gets released he joins his brother Billy and both of them decide to move to California for a fresh start. Now Billy is an 8-year-old. They decide to take this road trip through the Lincoln Highway, which is a historic highway which cuts from New York to California, so it's kind of like a coast to coast highway. But the best laid plans go awry because 2 of Emmett's colleagues at the work facility kind of end up being stowaways and end up at his house, and they have different plans for Emmett and Billy, so they end up in New York for a specific thing, and shenanigans ensue. I have this thing about reading Amor Tolls at very opportune times in my life. So the first book that I had read of him was A Gentleman in Moscow, where a man is kind of locked down in a hotel. He's not supposed to step out of that hotel for the rest of his life, and that was what I was feeling when I read that book as well, because it was the first lockdown in 2020 and I was feeling I was having cabin fever essentially. And this one I thought was a road trip book, and I thought it was opportune to read it because I was on vacation when I picked this up and I was, on the hunt for unoccupied beaches in South Goa. So it was very the theme was right, but the book failed to match up to the theme for me as it progressed. What I thought was a road trip book. I wanted, scenes on the road. I wanted like food from the road, the conversations that you have on the road. I wanted all these like road trip adventure kind of book. I didn't get that, unfortunately. It was the eponymous highway was only there for a few chapters in the beginning, and then they immediately reach New York, and then like these madcap shenanigans ensue, and all of these really small characters get introduced into the plot, and there's just too many small plot lines which get formed and which completely ruined the experience for me. Because at the beginning when I was reading, I really fell in love with Billy, the 8-year-old brother of Emmett. He is just his character is just so adorable because he's someone who loves reading. He's always thirsty for knowledge. He's hungry for adventure, and he was also portrayed to be more perceptive than the adults that surround him, like how children are more perceptive than adults usually. So I really loved reading about Billy's character. I wanted more interaction of Billy with certain key characters, but that was missing because of all these random characters which got added into the plot. So I was really disappointed with this book as I kept reading on, and this is not a easy to get through book as well. The ending was a little impactful, but I think it was a little bit too late to salvage the damage which had already been done throughout the book, in my opinion. So that's why I ended up rating this book only 3 stars out of 5, and 1 star for that is solely because of Billy, because I just love that character so much. So yeah, that was the first book. The next book that I finished was a fantasy book, and that is The Burning God by Arif Kuang. This is book 3 in the Poppy War trilogy, and this is honestly the only fantasy series that will ever catch me reading. In this particular book, Rin, who is the protagonist, has kind of been betrayed by all her allies. So she returns to her home ground, which is the south of the Nicara country, and she rallies the forces there. She rallies the people there to fight the northerners, to fight the Hesperians, who are the colonizers. It's a little difficult to kind of like give you the background of this trilogy because it is just vast. I've forgotten a lot of what happens in book one, but I just love reading this series because of how action packed it is. I remember when I read the first book, it started off like, as a Hunger Games kind of a reference, because there was this academy where everybody's training for a particular art. There is a danger looming in the horizon, but it's not yet there because you are in the school. But I think like I'm sorry, I don't mean the Hunger Games. It was kind of like the Hunger Games and that, what is that trilogy? Divergent? Yeah, Divergent. The Divergent trilogy mixed into it. But what took those books one whole book to say, this book does in like a few chapters and then moves on to war. And then there's just fast, breathtaking action which happens. This book does not leave any mercy, like as in it's very brutal in terms of explaining the after effects of war, about famine, about how normal people are heavily impacted by decisions made by authority figures and who go into war for something as power and for land or riches or anything. So it does not cut any corners. It's very brutal. There are a lot of trigger warnings for war, for abuse, for trauma, for a million other things. What I really appreciated was how colonizers were depicted in this book. So the basic theme of it is that there is an island which is filled by people called the Nikara. So essentially, I think they're trying to say that they are Japanese, and there is no, actually Chinese. They're the Chinese people, and they are invaded by the Hesperians, who are these colonizers who think that the people in the Nikara island are technologically and just in all ways they're inferior to the Hesperians. So they think it is their duty to kind of impose their rule, to impose their culture upon these inferior people, and they try to justify it in that way. Again, does not cut any corners in the depiction of colonizers, and I very much appreciated it. That is just the kind of brutal look I think is necessary. Coming from a country like India, I do think that we do tend to sometimes glorify the British for the good things that they brought into the country, like the railway system, English, things like that. But or very often enough, the damage that they've done is overlooked. And I appreciated that this book takes a hard look at it in a different way, like portraying it in on the ground during the war. I think was very interesting. So really enjoyed this book. Broke my heart in the ending. I won't spoil it for you, but absolutely heartbreak happens in the last few pages. But this is one series that is highly readable, and I would always recommend it. So yeah, 5 out of 5 for me. Then the classic that I finished in January is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. This is a classic that I've had on my shelf for quite some time, so I'm finally glad that I picked it up and I finished it. A book that needs no introduction, I would think. This is the story of how Victor Frankenstein is a scientist who's obsessed with the physical sciences, and he discovers the secret of life, and he creates a monster. Now he gets horrified with the monster that he's created, and he wants to abandon and wants to forget about him, but that does not happen. The monster and Dr. Frankenstein keep running into each other at different points throughout the story, and the monster also has a grudge to bear on humanity and on the doctor himself. So yeah, like I said, a plot I think does not need any introduction, but I really enjoyed this book because I went into it thinking that, oh, it'll be a horror sci-fi kind of a book, but I came out with it feeling that it was more human, like it was showing more humanity than I expected, because the monster is someone who wants to get along with people, who wants to talk to them, who wants to express himself, but because of his grotesque appearance, about his grotesque voice, they are scared, they run away from him, they attack him, they think that he's unnatural, and that molds his behavior, his thinking as well. So when he is kind of like learning the quirks of humanity, kind of like what ticks them, what makes them angry, language, all these skills that human beings take as granted, when he's learning through association with them, I think that was a really clever way of juxtaposing how somebody who is created by man is learning about humans and the evils of humanity and the prejudices, the preconceived notions that we have. So really enjoyed this. absolutely masterful writing, I think. And I just special mention to this particular edition that I have, which is the Penguin Deluxe edition. So yeah, really enjoyed this. Again, another 5 out of 5 for me. The last book that I finished is Cloud Cuckoo Land by Agni Doer. This is a sweeping, this is a historical fiction, contemporary, there's even sci-fi. It's just a mix of different genres, but it is set across different generations, different geographies, different characters, and all these different characters are linked by their obsession with one ancient text that they find at different points in their lives. It influences their decisions, it greatly influences the choices that they make, and the story of that ancient text also is very cleverly woven into the story of each of the characters as the narration happens. Each of the chapters is for a different character, and you kind of like find out parts of their story as you're reading the entire book. There's also another common theme for this book, which is libraries and librarians, and how librarians can actually inculcate the sense of wonder and the love for books and the love for language in young kids. And all of the different characters have had the influence of a librarian early in their lives, which influence again, their adult lives as well. There is a twist. There is a little bit of a suspense theme which happens throughout the entire book, particularly for the character which is set in the spaceship. So really enjoyed it. It was done masterfully, I think. Just the weaving of the entire story between all these different narrations, all these different characters, I never lost interest, which is such a big statement given how big this particular book is. Yeah, it's been a month of reading tomes, true to my username, and I really enjoyed my time with most of them. If you like this video and you think you will like my other content, do like, share, comment, subscribe. Do subscribe, it would mean a lot to me. And thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time.